Welcome back to the two-part video series on East Center Street, aka Smoky Row. In the first video, we toured the south side of East Center Street, ending with the same look at the historic Washington County Courthouse. In this episode, part 2 or video 2, we will cover the north side of the street as we head back toward the square. The first area on the north side as we begin our tour is a parking lot today. On the right, you can see the old Ozark Theater building, and the car ahead on the left is near where the law offices of Tom Pearson used to be. Tommy, as he was known, is the grandson of attorney Homer Pearson, whom I mentioned in the first video. Also where the car on the left was the original location of the Butterfield Hotel, initially used by the Butterfield Stage Line during their 1858-1861 run prior to the Civil War. This area was also home to the Ozark Theater, one of our earliest movie houses in the early part of the 20th century. This is the same area when it was a park around 1906. The people are here for a teachers' conference. Beyond the park, notice the Ozark Theater building, still known then as the Knights of Pythias Hall and Opera House. See the KOP on the building? The following year, 1907, it would become the Ozark Theater. What a great view from the 1930s, looking west up Center Street from the old courthouse. On the corner you can see a Conoco filling station. It's in the area where the park used to be. The first building after the parking lot is now home to Marlin Blackwell Architects. From around 1959 to 1966, it was a Goodyear tire store. In this photo from 1973, you can see it was a Sherwin-Williams paint store. More recently, it held a couple of clubs and a home decor store called With. The next building to the west is the Collins Building, dating to 1927. Today, it's the home of Arkansas Heritage Realty, but it has held many businesses, including Economy Grocery, here from 1928 to 1937. Arkansas Western Gas was also located here from 1928 to 1940. And here we see an ad for Western Auto, which was here as well from 1936 to 1961. Here's a pretty cool ad for Bob Maddox's Cafe, which was here from 1951 to 1959. From the 1970s through the 1980s, it was home to a number of attorneys. About the middle of the north side, between College Avenue on the east and the alleyway on the west, is a super historical area of the street. The second family that settled Fayetteville after the Magars, the Matthew Leeper family, had a home here. Matthew Leeper's wife, Lucy, was a Washington, that is, a cousin of first President George Washington. Matthew Leeper's father, James, was a Revolutionary War veteran and is buried down off Pump Station Road, about 100 yards east of Combs Chapel Cemetery. On a sidebar, Matthew Leeper became an Indian agent and was killed in the Tonkawa Massacre of 1862 at the Confederate-held Wichita Agency at Fort Cobb near Anadarko, Oklahoma. In the late 1850s, Charles Butterfield had his home here, possibly living in the old Leeper home. But the main thing on this part of the street, as far as I'm concerned, is the great old Winkle Hotel, which was here from 1879 to 1914 when it burned. Here's another photograph of the old Winkle Hotel around 1906 when it had been turned to face East Center Street. Later on, the Vaudette and Princess Theaters would be at this location early in the 20th century, and they were among our first theaters. The next two buildings are both Fulbright Buildings. The Fulbright family owned the Fayetteville Democrat, a weekly, which would merge with Louise Payne's Fayetteville Daily to become the Fayetteville Daily Democrat, which on July 8, 1937, became the Northwest Arkansas Times. Today, the first of the Fulbright buildings, shown here, is home to Pearl's Books. They carry the Square Book by Anthony J. Wapple with J.B. Hogan, in case you would like to learn more about the history of East Center Street. The lighter-colored Fulbright building, next to Pearl's, is home to Greenwood Gearhart Incorporated, an investment firm. This attractive building, dating to 1907, is the present-day home of the Greenhaw & Greenhaw law firm, who have been at this location since 1978. Many people may remember this building as the site of the old Quaker Drug Store, which was here from 1929 to 1973. These are the last two buildings before we reach the alleyway behind the square. Today, the building on the right is home to the Flying Possum store. The building on the left is currently vacant. Over the years, the Flying Possum building has been home to a number of businesses. Louise Payne's Fayetteville Deli was here from the 1890s to 1904. The Scenic Theater was here in 1907 and 1908. The Arkansas Countryman, another newspaper, was here in 1919 and 1921. And from 1951 to 1962, the Sears mail-order store was located here. The second floor has held a number of attorneys over time, including Clifton Wade, Hal Douglas, and David Malone, and of course, Len Wade, known as the mayor of Smoky Row because of his longevity there, and Len recently retired. The building that is empty today also housed a number of businesses over time, including Duggan's Plumbing from 1903 to 1928, as shown in the ad here. Goodyear Tire was here from 1936 to 1950, and McKeon's Fabric Store from 1951 to 1965. After the alley, today the U of A Continuing Education building takes up the rest of the north side of East Center Street up to the square. With the older buildings gone, it's a little complicated to figure out what stores were where, what businesses, and so forth. Originally, the addresses were 16 through 2 in descending order to the square, and by using the old city directories, we can find most of those businesses. This picture from the 1940s shows the buildings that once occupied the continuing education space. You can clearly see Cy Carney's appliance store on the corner and Swepco next to it. Swepco was located at this spot for 40 years from 1926 to 1967. All these buildings were raised in 1979 to make way for the continuing ed building. Back in the day, about the middle of this row was what we might call Saloon Center. This ad from 1870 for Bishop's Liquor Store. Notice it says third door from the square on north side of Main Street. Remember, it used to be called that before it was called Center Street. Anyway, in this area of the street, in the 1870s and 1880s, we had Prez Johnson's Saloon, Clore's Billiard Hall, the Comet Saloon, that's Taylor, and the Elkhorn Saloon. Here's a longer range view from 1941 of the north side of East Center near the square. That's the Bob White pastry shop on the corner, and there's the Swepco sign as always. This is one of my favorite photos of the northeast area of East Center from the mid-1950s. You can see the Darling store on the corner, Swepco as usual, and Cowan Shoe Store. Do you recognize the casually dressed fellow crossing East Avenue there? Yes, that's Senator J.W. Fulbright out strolling across the square. This photo is from 1973 and shows BB's Jewelers and Cowan's Shoe Store. The unmarked building at the left housed the music store. Okay, we've reached the corner now, 2 East Center. A lot of places have been here over time. William McGar's Grocery was here 1837 around the Civil War. Reed and Ferguson had a store here from 1866 to 1883. Buck's Drug Store 1918-1919. Ownby Drug 1919-1931. Bob White Pastry in the 1930s. Cy Carney Appliances 1945-1950. Darling Shop 1950-1963. Garden Hire Jewelers 75 to 78. And all the buildings were raised in 1979 so that we could build the University of Arkansas Continuing Ed building in 1981. Well, that completes our tour of both sides of East Center Street. Thank you very much for watching. And if you want to learn more details about anything about the square or the streets leading off of it, don't forget the Square book. written by Anthony J. Wapple with J.B. Hogan. And I thank you all again very much.